Two people. Same job, same city. Paychecks within a few $100s of each other. One has read the books, downloaded 3 budgeting apps, built a color-coded spreadsheet, and watched the Sunday reset ritual fall apart by Wednesday for the 3rd month in a row. The other has not thought about money in months, and somehow has thousands more saved. That gap is not talent, it is not luck, and it is not some hidden rule about money that one of them stumbled onto. It is one uncomfortable truth about how financial behavior actually works, and people will spend years refusing to accept it. Not because they are lazy, because the refusal is easier on the brain than what acceptance actually asks for. Stay with me, because the part that breaks the cycle is not the part you think it is. Listen to what people tell themselves about money. They will get serious when they earn a little more. Not rich, just a bit more breathing room. Just enough that every decision stops feeling like damage control. They will reset next month. This month was unusual. The car repair, the birthday dinner, the heating bill. Next month will be normal, and normal is when the real plan kicks in. They just need a better system. The last app was too complicated. The next one will be simpler. The last budget collapsed because life got in the way. The next one will have more flexibility built in. You have heard these. You have probably said them. And the reason this is not a judgment is that those beliefs are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. The blunt version sounds like this. The problem is not the plan. It is not the income. It is not the app. The problem is that your brain is actively generating reasons to stay exactly where you are, and it is extraordinarily good at it. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning. Unlike most psychology terms that describe abstract tendencies in other people, this one is happening inside your head, right now, in real time. The way it works is counterintuitive. You do not form a belief and then go looking for evidence to support it. Your brain starts with the conclusion it wants, usually the one that requires the least immediate discomfort, and then builds a case backward. The reasoning feels rational. It references real things. The car repair really did happen. Next month really might be different. But the reasoning was never in charge. The conclusion was always the destination. The reasoning was just the vehicle that got you there. Researchers studying financial decision-making have noticed something striking. People consistently overestimate how much their financial behavior will improve in the next few months, and they keep doing it quarter after quarter, even after the previous quarter's prediction has already failed. Not once, repeatedly, with their own data sitting right in front of them showing the prediction was wrong. This is not ignorance. These are people who can see the pattern and keep making the same prediction anyway. Not because they are irrational, because the alternative, accepting that the behavior itself is the problem rather than the circumstances around it, is more expensive for the brain to process than simply moving the deadline forward another month. This is the mechanism behind every quiet promise that you will start properly next month. Your brain is pricing 2 options and choosing the cheaper one. Believing next month will be different costs almost nothing right now. It produces relief. It produces a small sense of control. It requires no immediate action. Believing the harder version, that the entire framework is broken and has been for some time, costs something significant. It costs the story you have been telling yourself about who you are with money. And your brain treats that story the way it treats physical safety. It protects it. Picture how this plays out. Someone spends 3 months almost confronting their credit card balance. They know the number is bad. They know it has been getting worse. Every time they get close to actually sitting down with it, something happens. The timing is wrong. They are too stressed. They will deal with it after the weekend. The weekend comes, they feel better, the urgency drops, and the moment passes. That pattern is not happening because they are avoiding the discomfort of a number. It is happening because getting close to the number starts activating a question their brain does not want answered. If I have known this was a problem for 3 months, what does that say about me? The escape hatch appears before the question can land. They take it. The cycle resets. And the durable part is this. The escape hatch feels reasonable every single time. It does not feel like avoidance. It feels like wisdom. It feels like waiting for the right moment. Now, if you think awareness is the way out, that simply seeing the pattern will be enough to break it, you are about to walk into something significantly worse than the original problem. When you become aware that your brain is protecting you from an uncomfortable financial truth, two things happen. First, the awareness itself feels like progress. You caught yourself. You noticed the pattern. You named it. And that naming produces a small sense of control, which the brain registers as a partial win. A partial win is enough to release just enough pressure that the urgency to actually do something drops. You did not fix the problem. You made peace with watching it happen. Second, awareness without a new behavior to replace the old one does not create change. It creates observation. And observation without action is a specific kind of suffering. You see the impulse to avoid. You feel the escape hatch open. You walk through it anyway. Except now, you also watch yourself do it. So you stack self-criticism on top of the original avoidance and produce exactly the same outcome. Behavioral researchers have repeatedly found that people with high financial self-awareness, meaning they can accurately describe their own spending patterns and emotional triggers, are no more likely to change those patterns than people with low self-awareness. In some studies, they are slightly less likely. You can become extremely good at understanding your financial behavior and still not change it. Awareness is not the lever, it is just the light. You can see everything clearly and still stay exactly where you are. This is what psychologists call the intention-behavior gap, and in the context of money, it operates through a mechanism that almost never gets explained properly. When you confront an uncomfortable financial truth, your brain does not just experience the discomfort of the information. It experiences the discomfort of what that information implies about you. If you have been overspending for 3 years, the data is not just a budget problem. It is a story, and that story has a character in it. The character is someone who could not manage something that other people seem to manage fine. Your brain is not protecting you from the spreadsheet. It is protecting that character, because the character feels like an identity, and identities are not things the brain gives up without a fight. Here is the surprising part. Higher financial self-esteem actually makes people more resistant to changing their behavior, not less. If you think of yourself as someone who is reasonably good with money, responsible, aware, trying, then the harder reality becomes a direct attack on that self-concept. The brain works harder to defend a more valuable story. So the people who feel worst about their finances are sometimes more open to change than the people who feel they are doing okay. The stronger the identity, the stronger the protection. The stronger the protection, the harder the change. This explains something that confuses a lot of people. Why do the biggest financial wake-up moments feel so powerful in the instant and then fade so completely within a week? You see the credit card statement actually land. You calculate what you have spent on takeout over 5 years. You see someone with the same income and dramatically more saved. The discomfort is real. The urgency is real. And then within days, it is gone. The reason is not that you are forgetful. The brain treats emotional spikes the way the body treats fevers. Something to process and resolve, not something to act on permanently. Within a week, motivated reasoning has rebuilt the exits. A new justification has appeared. The comparison was not fair. The circumstances were different. The timing was bad. And this is where the trap closes completely. You have the wake-up moment. You decide this time is different. You make a plan. The plan requires willpower, tracking, consistent manual effort. For 2 or 3 weeks, the urgency carries you. Then the urgency fades, as it always does, because the brain does not sustain emotional peaks indefinitely. It returns to baseline. The plan that was built on the urgency does not survive the return to baseline. It collapses. Now you have one more data point that says you cannot stick to things. One more piece of evidence for the story that maybe this is just who you are with money. The cycle this produces, once you see it, you will recognize every phase. The month begins with some version of a fresh start, a new intention, however small. The behavior holds for a period proportional to how recent the last wake-up moment was. Somewhere between day 8 and day 18, the baseline returns. The plan starts requiring effort that was not there at the beginning. A decision gets made in a tired moment that breaks the streak. Rather than treating the broken streak as data, the brain uses it to close the conversation. What is the point? It was going to fall apart anyway. There is always next month. Next month arrives. The cycle resets. Every repetition of that cycle does two things. It strengthens the neural connection between financial intention and eventual failure, and it raises the cost of trying again because each attempt that ends in the same place makes the next attempt feel less worth starting. If you are wondering whether running this cycle for a couple more years really changes anything in a meaningful way, that is the part that makes this dangerous, because the cost of the cycle is not what you think it is, and almost none of it shows up in your bank balance. Princeton researchers studying the cognitive load of financial stress found something that gets cited a lot but understood rarely. The mental burden of persistent money problems is equivalent to losing roughly 13 IQ points in functional decision-making. That finding usually gets used to describe one bad month. The more important version is what happens when the cycle runs for years. In year 1, the cost is mostly emotional. You feel the stress, you carry the low-grade anxiety, but you function. You still make decent decisions in other areas. The financial background noise is uncomfortable but manageable. You still have enough bandwidth left over for your work, your relationships, your health. You are tired of the cycle, but the cycle has not yet become your identity. By year 3, something has shifted. The financial stress is no longer background noise. It has become background architecture. The anxiety is not something that flares up when you check your account. It is the water you are swimming in. Sustained financial stress at the 3-year mark begins producing measurable effects on sleep, on relationships, on physical health, independently of the actual financial numbers involved. The stress itself, not the debt, not the income, the stress, is generating costs in your body and your relationships that have nothing to do with your bank account. By year 5, the pattern is no longer a behavior. It is a belief. You have watched yourself attempt and fail enough times that the cycle has become your explanation for who you are. Someone who is just not good with money. Once that story solidifies into an identity, it is almost impervious to information. You can learn every fact about personal finance, and none of it will move you, because the problem is no longer a knowledge problem or even a behavior problem. It is an identity problem. You cannot spreadsheet your way out of an identity. This is the real compounding nobody warns you about. Not interest. Identity. Every year the same cycle runs. The story about who you are with money picks up another year of evidence. Time is not waiting for you to be ready. Time is actively working against you, not because life is cruel, but because the brain builds itself around its most repeated experiences. Repeat the cycle enough times, and the cycle becomes the structure. That is not a metaphor. That is literally how neural architecture develops. So, accepting the harder version is not a dramatic confrontation. It is not a months-long painful reckoning. Acceptance is a single cognitive event. It is the moment you stop explaining the pattern and start treating the pattern as data. That is it. Not forgiveness. Not a resolution. Not a 5-year plan. Just the decision to stop using your intelligence to build a case for why your situation is uniquely complicated, and start using it to design around the brain you actually have rather than the one you wish you had. What that unlocks is 3 things, and they are simpler than the books make them sound. First, stop treating willpower as a strategy. It was never a strategy. It is a temporary resource that depletes under stress. Build the decisions you need to make during calm moments, before the emotional brain has any involvement. Savings automated before the paycheck registers. Bills on autopay before a low balance can interfere with your judgment. Every financial decision you can remove from a live emotional moment, remove it. Not because you are weak, Because you are designing around a brain that is not built for cold rational calculation in hot emotional states. Nobody's is. Second, reduce the number of live financial decisions to nearly zero. Decision fatigue is not motivational theory. It is neuroscience. The quality of your decisions degrades measurably across a day as the number of prior decisions increases. Every manual financial choice you make depletes the same cognitive resource you need for every other choice that day. Automate the recurring ones. Make the important ones during the first 2 hours of your most rested day. Protect your decision quality the way you would protect any finite resource. Third, and this one does the most work, stop trying to change your behavior. Change your identity first. Behavior change framed as an identity statement. I am someone who saves, rather than I am trying to save, produces significantly more durable outcomes. Not because the words are magic, because the brain organizes behavior around self-concept. Give it a new self-concept and the behavior has somewhere different to land. Picture the small version of this. You walk past the thing you would normally buy. The old script says, I am trying to cut back, and trying to cut back is something the brain treats as a constraint to negotiate with. The new script says, I am not someone who buys this, and the brain treats that as a fact about reality. The first negotiates. The second moves on. If something in this video pushed against a story you have been telling yourself, comment with the one financial truth you have been refusing to look at, not to confess, to name it. Because the moment a pattern gets named out loud is the moment the brain stops being able to pretend it was hiding for a good reason. Subscribe if you want the next one. On the 3 automation systems that make willpower irrelevant, here's what happens if you do nothing with this. The cycle runs again. Same pattern, 1 year older, 1 year more embedded. The story about who you are with money picks up another year of evidence. The bandwidth narrows a little more. The next attempt starts a little harder. Here is what happens if you do something with it. One uncomfortable moment. Then the systems run it. Not you, the systems. And your brain, no longer burning fuel on a problem it was never designed to solve manually, finally gets room to do something it has not had room for in years. Just live.